Get your diesel running. Head out on the highway, missing all the roadkill.
Oh, watch out.
Another Truckie Tuesday. Indicate when you're changing from lanes. Do not brake check me in my prime. Australia moves and it's thanks to you guys. Trucks to get there on time. Listen to the air horns. Dip your lights from high beam. HVL that helps you. Thanks to right hand of fame. On the highway driving all day, and at night when the traffic's slow. Getting goods from state across lines, we're ready to go. Without trucks, Australia stops. They're driving around the clock. Never, never give it up. Drive safe tonight. Drive left-hand side.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Truckie Tuesday where the road warrior Rod Hannafy, Rocket Rod Hannafy, joins us. And this time he's not standing by his broken down Kenwood. No, he's at home in his studio. G'day, brother.
Good morning, mate. How are you?
I'm good. You're at home.
Yes. Last week I got 8 hours at home, actually, but of course most of that I was in bed, so the life of a truck driver, mate.
Life of a truck driver. Hey, listen, just a reminder to everyone, if you're a Brizzy-based truckie for a limited time, if you mention the code Luke, L-U-K-E 10, Luke 10, not only will you score a truck show special thanks to ICEPACK, 10% off any new install, but ICEPACK will throw in a free auto start kit that is worth $680. Now, there is one per customer. We got a big, and thank you very, very, very much to ICEPACK for joining us and being a major sponsor of Truckie Tuesday. We love them. And it was all thanks to Rod Hannafy, who many years ago told me how much he loved this product, and it's made life a lot easier for a lot of truckies. Now,
And mate, I was there Thursday. I went and visited them Thursday and we had a chat, and they're real keen, so they're top blokes.
they are icepack.com.au. And remember that truck show special if you're a Brizzy driver. The code, again, Luke 10, Luke 10. Now, big episode today. I want to introduce Paul Salvati from the NHVR. We're also going to chat with Adrian from ICEPACK. It's all happening. But first of all, Paul Salvati, who I first met when we did the Truckie Tuesday show on the national Triple M radio program that I had. It's great to have you back again, Paul.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Rod, you've got some questions for Paul, but there are many questions we get from our listeners. A lot of people, and you've heard this before, Paul, a lot of truckies think that the NHVR are a bunch of narcs, that they're a bunch of bloody Nazis, that they don't really care about the welfare of truckies. They're just there to police the industry and sometimes go a bit beyond what the truckies think that they should be doing. Rod, I'll let you explain.
So the reason we've got Paul on, some time ago, like Sal Petrosito is the past CEO. He's moved on now and there is a new CEO and she's formulating a new plan for the future, which we hope to cover once that's all organised. But I spoke to Sal at a meeting, and I've got to give credit first to Vic Roads. Now, Vic Roads in those days were operating independently, and they opened their weigh bridges to truck drivers. So the big Broadford weigh bridges, you come out of Melbourne, they revamped it, they put a digital display up on the roof so it couldn't be tampered with, and they left it open. And I rang Vic Roads, I made a couple of phone calls, I eventually spoke to the head of their highway patrol down there, their task force, and I said, mate, geez, what's the idea with the weighbridge? You've left it on. And he said, we're doing it for you blokes. We want to help you be compliant. And we thought if we left the weighbridge on, blokes could check their weight, do it right. They did it first. So then as the NHVR rolled out its takeover of those state road authorities, they eventually took control of RTA, Transport for New South Wales facilities and their staff. And of course, there's a number of weighbridges in New South Wales. And I approached Sal And I said, mate, Vic Roads have left the weighbridges open. What about doing so in New South Wales? I had approached Transport for New South Wales. They wouldn't do it themselves. And Sal said, oh, okay, we'll have a look into that. Now, to be fair, within a month, he came back to me, said, we're going to do a program. We're going to trial 2. And the one at Darrell Balgie, which everyone probably knows is between Parkes and Forbes on the Newell Highway, that was one of the ones selected. So, of course, the next step, when they got it all up and running, they left the lights on in the weighbridge at night. Now, I had comments from drivers, oh, what's the go with the lights on? There's nobody home. So I, again, approached Sal and I said, look, if you put up a sign at the weighbridge that tells us it's available for check weighing, we don't need a flash sign, doesn't need to be coloured or lights or anything, just a sign that says it will be open for use. Mm-hmm. Now, again, within, I think, 3 weeks, that was done. So the reason for this and having Paul on is that a couple of drivers had commented, oh, you've left the weighbridge open, there'll be a hidden camera, we'll go in there and we'll get weighed and we'll get knocked off. And I have an absolute guarantee from Vic Roads initially and from Paul that is not the case. I want to show that the NHVR will listen to a reasonable request. I want to show that they're genuine in what they do. And rather than me tell people that the NHVR is not going to have a secret camera to knock you off, I wanted Paul to be able to validate that. To be fair, Queensland Transport have had a couple open as well, but the NHVR now control those bridges. They are responsible for them. I want to acknowledge the fact they listened, and I want to tell people that if they come up with something, the NHVR is approachable. And so, Paul, over to you, mate. You agree with sort of that outline?
Yeah, thanks, Rod. It's funny hearing you talk about the origins of this, because from my perspective, what happens is Sal comes and says, I've just talked to Rod, can you have a look at this? And then I go and do all the hard work. And it sounds like Sal takes all the credit, which I guess is what bosses do.
Mm. And producers of podcasts, by the way. Get going.
Yeah. But look, you're right, Rod. So we've got 5 now sitting in New South Wales. We've got 4 in Queensland, 7 in Victoria, where drivers can check their weight. Now, the reason we do that is so that drivers can check their weight. From our perspective, our preference is always that we don't have road trauma, we don't have accidents, we don't have issues. And the best way of doing it is making sure that drivers have all the tools to ensure their journeys are safe, that the truck's safe, that the weight's right, they're not too tight, etc. We haven't issued a single infringement or anything off the check-weigh process, to be honest. We do have cameras at a couple of them. One of the challenges we had early on in New South Wales when I first talked to the team there, they said, we did that years and years ago, we had vandalism. And I said, well, how long ago was that? They said over 10 years. And I said, I think industry's a bit better now. I think they're more professional. I don't think we'll have that issue. But they said, can we leave the CCTV cameras on, which are just closed circuit? I said, sure. But they don't show the weight and the rego, if that makes sense. And we don't keep the weight. So if you come through, let's say you're over mass, we would hope if you're a driver and you're over mass, you do the right thing. But if you're over mass, we don't do anything about it, because the whole purpose of this is to help drivers keep themselves safe, not for us to try and issue tickets.
So that side of it, nobody's perfect, Paul. And look, some trucks do have scales now, but even then, you still have to calibrate those scales. So, and you're supposed to do that every 12 months to be compliant, is my understanding. So if you've got scales on and you've had some work done to the suspension, or it's done a fair bit of work, it's good to be able to go in, pull up on the scale, check that your weights are correct, because then we know we're compliant. But if you put a different load on, if you put something on, and it's all right, mate, if you're loading 34 one-ton pallets and that's all you load all the time, you know exactly where the weight's going to fall and what it's going to do. But if you go in next week and they've got 10 pallets that are 2 ton and 8 pallets that are 1 ton and 4 that are 500 kilos, you're trying to get it right. You load it on the truck with the best intent. You go out, you pull onto whichever weighbridge you're going past, you check it, and you think, geez, I probably should have put those 2 there. So next time, I know to move it. And you can't just park somewhere and put a forklift and say, right, put that one there. No, that's too heavy. Take it back off and do all that. No one's going to do that for us. They're just going to tell you, load, mate, and bugger off. But if those facilities are available and you've made them that way, You've made a sign up to sort of at least tell people that's what's happening, and that's why we're promoting it as well, because still some drivers don't understand how it works. And you've just said, yes, the TV camera is there to make sure people don't do something stupid. I think the one thing I have asked for since, Paul, the wording at the one at Darrell-Balgi is pretty small. And, of course, Broadford was closed for quite a long time. There was comment on that, and it turned out, my understanding is to be rats actually got into the wiring and chewed it all up. That's why it was closed for so long. But the facility is there, as you would agree, to help us be compliant and safe. I want people to understand that the NHVR did it because something was put forward to them and you agree that there was a good intent and that you are not there to sneak up on them and send them a bill afterwards, that it is to help us be compliant. I want to thank, and as you say, you did the work, mate. And I did ring you a little while ago and say, geez, I thought you were going to do some more of them. And you said, I thought we had. Hang on, Rod. And, of course, now there's another few done, mate. So I want to show you're approachable. I want to show you listen. And I want to show your intent is genuine.
I guess for the listeners, my role there at the regulators, I'm the Chief Operations Officer. So all the on-road enforcement, off-road enforcement sits under me alongside other things. So if any of your listeners think they've got a ticket because they use the checkway, I've got no issue if you drop me a line. It's just paul.salvati, nhvr.gov.au, because that shouldn't happen. Because the instructions to staff is that's not what they're for. And as you said, it's to check your onboard mass. It's to check if you've loaded somewhere and you've been told at the gate where your weight is and you don't think it's quite right because it doesn't drive like that's the correct weight. Come and check it. The whole purpose, Rod, as you said, is to keep industry safe.
So, Paul, I do have another suggestion for the NHVR, and I've been told this is not exactly your responsibility, but as a B-double driver, I'm sure you're aware, of course, we have weights for each actual group. And if you're under HML, high mass, you virtually go to each maximum gross weight on each group. But if you've got a B-double, technically at the moment on CML, concessional mass, if you load normal weights, you put 20 tonne on each try. You go to CML, you're only allowed 21 on one try, 20 and a half on the other. Now, to me, it's just one of those things where you tell a driver, mate, you can only load to this weight. Why? Well, because that's the law and the law is stupid. And I'm going to put the NHVR on notice that I want to ask why under CML we can't load both tries to 21 tonne. It's a 500 kilo increase on the gross. It means it's simpler to explain to a driver. And I'm going to put that up as my next. Here's a simple little thing. If you look at this, you change it, it makes it easier for us. So any driver that has some question, that has some suggestion, we've shown that you're prepared to listen. I want them to understand that you will. Now, if they ring up and say, I want the logbook pages pink, mate. No, they look better. Well, of course, you're not going to do that. You've got to be reasonable and fair. It's got to be something you have the responsibility for. But I want them to know you'll listen, and I want them to think about those things, because every driver has knowledge and skills and experience. You blokes aren't in the trucks like us, but if we can give that experience to you, we get an outcome. You get something, and of course, the end result is that we end up with a safer and better industry, and I'm sure you'd agree that's the intent that we both want.
Absolutely, Rod. Look, a couple of things on that. Just to close out the checkway, I had a meeting with a company that does weigh bridges just last week, and they're putting together some proposals for me to actually get a lot of the older weigh bridges that don't have the digital readouts. I've asked them what would it cost to put digital readouts on some of those as well, to see if we can actually expand the checkway program to more weigh bridges. So I haven't finished working on that. It's something I think's bringing value, so we'll keep working on it. Rod, in terms of listening to industry and getting ideas from industry, we do that all the time. I had a great idea. I'm not sure if any of your listeners probably have been involved in that, the safety cam process, where they get a letter saying, hey, you went through these cameras, can we see your logbooks? That whole process, we've been getting a lot of feedback recently over the last couple of years from industry. We've made quite a few changes to the process. We were hoping to hold a big a co-design workshop and redesign it from the ground up with industry. Unfortunately, we couldn't quite get the numbers to make that work, but we pretty much every couple of months we're getting an idea from industry to actually how to make industry safer or how to make it more productive, how to reduce red tape. And wherever possible, our approach is to say, let's see if we can do that.
And mate, that's what I'm saying. Drivers don't recognise that unless they hear it from you. Me telling them is one thing, and as I say, it was in big rigs. No, these cameras are there. They're going to ping you. Blah blah blah. I'm never going in to use one. And I just wanted to be able to say, not only did I speak to someone, but that I have your validation of those facts. And I really appreciate your time coming on and making that clear, mate, and hope that we come up with some other better things.
Yeah, it's actually quite funny you say it. We had contact from a driver who was in a dispute with his boss about his mass, and he'd gone through the checkway. And he rang us to say, hey, can I get the details of when I came through? We had to go, we don't keep them. We don't have it. So we couldn't help him out in his dispute with his boss. So, it's another example. It's there to help industry.
I've got a question for you. Rod, does the NHVR get involved with consulting with governments when it comes to introducing legislation and making rules for truckies? And there's a reason I ask this. Everybody says the future of trucking in Australia has got to be electric trucks. Rod and I have discussed this. Now, Rod, you'll tell me if I'm wrong, but for a standard 6-axle semi-trailer in Australia, you got 42.5 tonnes gross weight. You can get heavy-duty vehicles like quad-axle groups, and they're approved for up to 50 or 50.5 tonnes, while the payload for a smaller 3-tonne truck is typically 2 to 3 tonnes of goods. Now, these rules are put in place, obviously, is it for safety? To me, the heavier any vehicle, the more damage it's going to do to our roads. And yet electric trucks will be allowed to be heavier because that battery is so bloody heavy. Does this concern you? And was the NHVR at all consulted on this legislation? So
we are consulted, but primarily consultation for us is more from an engineering perspective in terms of, hey, if we increase the mass, on the steer or the drive or wherever, what's the impact on the pavement? So we work with the different state government road managers. They've got their engineers, we've got our engineers. We work together to calculate the impact on the road surface from higher mass. So we're consulted from that perspective in terms of helping work out the technical implications of it. In terms of the fundamental idea itself, no, that's not really our remit because it's really driven a lot more from the environmental perspective and from a holistic, environmental sustainability perspective. And that's not really part of what we get involved in. But look, we are consulted, either from engineering. We do get asked sometimes on some of these legislative changes for our perspectives on them. But understand, for a lot of these things, what you've actually got as the decision makers, the transport ministers from each of the states. So most of the consultation happens at the state level, because if you don't have all those state ministers all supporting a change in legislation, it just doesn't happen.
Yeah, but you're going to get bosses who will say, well, if electric trucks are allowed to be heavier, why can't my truck tow a little bit more payload? That's one thing. The damage to the roads is one thing. But surely those rules were put in place because of safety issues as well, weren't they? So so are you saying that a heavier truck is more dangerous than 42.5 tonnes? And if so, why is it allowed?
And I'm not an engineer, so you're going to have to bear with me on this one. But I guess I'd say that when those rules are put in place to now, the engineering and the safety and the technology in the trucks is a lot different. I think trucks from 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, the trucks are getting safer and safer and safer. And I'm sure most of the drivers driving modern trucks will understand how much more tech there is in the trucks to keep them safe. So when you talk about safety, and again, forgive me because I'm not an engineer and I don't have the specifics on how they do the assessment, but I guess I'd say safety is absolutely an element they look at, but I would hazard an educated guess to say that the increased technology and safety features of the modern truck probably offset that small increase in mass.
Millennial, you got a question?
I'm just curious to know, what are the biggest misconceptions do you think truckies have about the NHVR?
I think the first one is that we set targets for our staff on issuing infringements. We do not, and never have, and never will. We don't get our funding from the tickets we issue on road, and that's why we have the freedom to do a lot more. Have a lot more discretion with our on-the-road officers to work out, is this a ticket? Is this a warning? Is this just an education opportunity? So to be honest, I think, because I hear about blitzes all the time, I hear about we're just in it to raise revenue. I see this online in the comments as well. That's just not true. To be honest, we've got the body-worn cameras. If we see an officer who's being overly aggressive in the way that they're treating industry, that's actually something we coach them about, because it's a tough job and we know it's a tough job, and we're trying to make sure that we're all business of safety. So it doesn't help us to issue tickets. All that does is put more pressure on drivers. Having said that, if we think there's a safety issue, we will issue a ticket, but there's no goals, there's no targets, and that's nowhere near our focus. If I'm going through, I guess, if I'm talking through misconceptions, I'd say about a fifth of our staff have been in the industry, either in depots or behind the wheel. So we've got a lot of experience. People have actually been drivers before who understand what it's like. I don't think anyone who's in this industry is in the industry to try and cause road trauma. I think every single person who's behind the wheel or running a company wants their drivers and wants the community to be safer. I think we're all on the same page there. Most of the drivers we interact with, most of the business owners and operators we interact with them, they're really positive. We work really well together. We're always happy to come and talk to drivers, do toolbox talks. If you are driving along, you're not sure on something, pull in and ask us. We're always happy to try and help industry be safer.
I think that's been the biggest change, Paul, from where we had before. We now have national rules, and yes, okay, the NHVR still is. We've still got the East-West thing. We're still arguing with that, but it's a step forward, and I really appreciate your intent that it is our lives on the road and that you're out there to help us, not hinder us. But if blokes do the wrong thing, they've got to expect a penalty, the same as if you do the wrong thing going through a stop sign, eh?
Yeah, and Rod, our approach now is increasingly for mass dimension loading offences. We will increasingly start looking at actually passing those penalties on to the operator, not the driver. Our perspective is the operator has the most control over the freight task. The driver probably has the least control over things like mass dimension loading. And therefore it should be the operator who bears the responsibility when there's non-compliance, not the driver. Again, I'll say it's driving in this industry. It's a tough gig, Rod. You know that. It's a tough gig. And you don't always get as much control over what you're doing as you'd like. So that's why we're trying to move to make sure those with the most control of the freight task are the ones that are being held to account.
That'll be something to look forward to, mate. And that's honestly, the one thing I've said about COR, it's been a marvellous intent. Of course, even in the States, they looked at COR. But from where I sit up till now, and as you say, that's a forward change. Up till now, as a driver, we've been the ones swinging at the end of that chain. We've been the one that copped it because somebody told us or pushed us or loaded us wrong, whatever the case may be. And I believe that's a failing. I think you'll find most people in industry would say that it hasn't achieved what we all hoped it was going to achieve at the start, and that was to take some of that pressure off the driver and put it on those responsible. But, mate, if that's where you're going, I think that's a really good change for the future. Yeah,
right. Look, one of our challenges with getting some of these chain responsibility investigations over the line is getting information. Like, very few drivers will put their job at risk by dobbing in their boss. Very few operators will put their big contracts at risk by saying, hey, this distribution centre's doing unsafe stuff. And without the information we need, it's very, very hard for us to actually get a successful investigation and prosecution. And we still hear from drivers all the time about things they've been asked to do, which are just incredibly unsafe. When they get called up to come do an extra shift when they're supposed to be an off day, they tell the boss they're tired, they get offered extra money to do it. We still hear these stories, and it does my head in that people would ask the drivers to do it. No load is worth someone's life. The profit margin on a load is not worth the life of your driver or the life of other people on the road. So, the chain responsibility legislation is great. We've had some successes. The challenge we will have, and we always have, is just getting enough information for a successful investigation to lead to a good prosecution.
Let's hope we have a win there in the future.
Paul Silvati is with us, the NHVR Chief Operations Officer. Paul, you may or may not know the answer to this, but we were watching this on the news just yesterday about a truck fire that happened on the M7, Sydney's M7, and it brought, obviously, traffic to a standstill. It broke out about 5 o'clock Friday on Old Walgrove Road at Eastern Creek, and all we heard was that a truck caught on fire, and I believe the driver survived but was taken to hospital. But does the NHVR know what caused that fire? And I'll tell you why. Because Nikki and I were watching this news story, and we both looked at each other and said, I wonder if that truck was carrying lithium batteries, which are known to be volatile. So we don't know the cause of the fire. Do you yet?
No, we probably wouldn't yet. In terms of the fire, the cause of the fire is usually determined by, obviously, the fire and rescue service when they come out and treat it. Sometimes we do get that information, so we've got good data sharing arrangements with the police. So if we see a if there's an accident that went across the police have responded to, they'll share the data, and that helps us understand what are the current risks in industry. Like we had a spate of tow coupling issues recently, we found that out through a range of sources. We had truck fires in the past where there was an issue with, I won't talk about a specific company, but there was an issue with a specific company and the way their truck was being put together. But no, we don't find out usually until after. And usually when I say after, it might be weeks after, unless we respond and talk to someone on the scene.
So, Paul, in that regard, the ATA for many years and others have pushed for accident investigations. Of course, what happens generally in the press, there's a crash and it's a truck crash. We are deemed guilty by default. And so everybody goes off and thinks, oh, yeah, bloody truck driver again. And yet, of course, we all know that those within the industry, and many years ago, I had the safety education trailer. I took it to the local school, and I got up and I spoke and I talked to the kids and I said, between cars and trucks, the majority of fatal crashes are caused by the car. Now, of course, after that, the teacher pulled me aside. She said, geez, I've never heard that before. Where do you get that idea from? And of course, the public don't know that. They don't understand what we do. And often in the press, it's a truck accident. We're deemed guilty by default. And maybe 2 weeks later, it comes out that truckie wasn't at fault, but it's too late. He's been canned in the first place. Those investigations,
It's too late.
Do you get all of that data from the states? Do you get enough of it? And does that help you? And should there be better investigations sometimes?
So, yes, to answer your questions, yes, we do get it. And yes, we use it for two ways. One, if the investigation shows that there's been a fundamental issue with the operator or the business, we'll go and do something and work with that operator and do an investigation if it's more serious. Otherwise, we use it to collect a look at what's happening. The challenge we have in this industry, Rod, and you talked about it really well. The sensationalism whenever there's a truck involved in an accident is basically this: look at this big, scary, deadly truck's just done this bad thing, regardless of who's at fault. And to be honest, Rod, that sells media, right? So the statistics, you're right, they do show. They just got released again this week by NTARC, the research company who work with NTI and looking at fault. And where there's a fatal accident, I think it's over 2/3 of the time it's a light vehicle at fault. And if you look further into that research, most of those fatalities come from, I guess I'd say, head-on collisions where there's more than one vehicle involved. The challenge, Rod, and this is one of the things that we need to get better doing with the NHVR, is I don't want to talk about fatalities. I want to talk about road trauma. Because when you say, let's expand fatalities to include serious injuries or critical injuries, it flips, Rod. And the actual 2/3 of the fault is actually the heavy vehicle driver. Having said that, a lot of those are, if you look at the research came out this week, it said inappropriate speed, too close following distance, inappropriate positioning, or distraction of the driver. Inappropriate following distance and inappropriate speed are interesting ones to me. It doesn't mean you're speeding. It just means you're going too fast for the terrain or too fast for the load you've got or something. But I think most of your drivers will know when a light vehicle pulls in front of you and reduces significantly your braking distance and something happens, you hit the back of it, that counts as a heavy vehicle at fault because you've rear-ended someone, right? When that's not always actually your fault. You had no chance to stop in time. But right, I guess my point is I prefer to talk on road trauma because if I just look at fatalities, the difference between a serious injury where someone's a paraplegic for life or where someone's in hospital for months and months, and a fatality could be half a second. It could be, you know what I mean? It's such a small difference between being a fatality and being a serious injury. I'd rather look at road trauma and say, hey, what are all the causes of road trauma? And how do we work together on addressing those? And if you look at the research this week, human factors by far make up the biggest proportion of road trauma incidents on our roads. The human factors, as I said, includes distraction. It includes driver behaviour. It includes the second vehicle, the light vehicle's behaviour as well. So what we're doing with our new CEO, Nicole, is trying to say, well, let's look at all the factors that go into actually road trauma where heavy vehicles are involved and see how we address all the factors and not just focus on the stuff that's about heavy vehicles. So I guess that's the direction we're going in, Rod, and I'm hoping that it resonates with you to understand everyone on the road has a shared responsibility towards safety. And whilst we're the heavy vehicle regulator and we just work with the heavy vehicles, you'll know from our previous campaigns, we spend a lot of time and a lot of resources educating light vehicles on how to be safer around heavy vehicles, because if we all be safe, whether you're in a truck or a car or a motorbike, whatever, and there's no road trauma, I'm sure we'll agree that's what we want to get to.
Yes, absolutely, mate.
Can I just go back to something that you said earlier about bosses putting pressure on their drivers to maybe drive when they shouldn't, even if the driver has said, look, I am fatigued, it's my day off, and they offer them a bit of extra money. I don't know how often that happens, but I got a press release from the NHVR just the other day, and you were saying, Paul Salvati, that you just want to really drum it home, heavy vehicle drivers, to prioritise their work and rest requirements. Now, there's a figure here that's concerning. Last year, 5,257 fatigue-related offences recorded nationally. It's a lot, isn't it, considering there's tough legislation and tough rules in place?
Yeah, and it is a lot. And look, fatigue as a cause of road trauma is probably plateauing or dropping a bit. So you've got to give industry credit on this one. Like, fatigue is becoming less, not by a lot, but it's gradually becoming less of a reason for road trauma, which is fantastic, which is what we want to see. But it is concerning that's still too many, because, look, and of those offences, they're not administrative offences, right? I'm not talking about you misspelled the name in your book or you made some minor error. This is actually around driving hours offences. That's too many. It's just too many. And I want to see that keep coming down and keep coming down.
I've got another question, and I'm sorry if I'm going like off track and if you don't have an answer for this, but we got a message the other day from a driver, Christian, who spoke about that he was involved in a suicide by truck. So somebody had jumped out in front of his truck. And the question that I had is, are there any programs or like what support is there for truckies who experience this? Because from what I understand, it's more common than what we would like it to be. And I was just thinking, truckies that experience this, because, Christian's message was heartbreaking.
Yeah. And you know what? I discovered, Kelsey and Paul and Rod, train drivers have the same problem.
It's an absolute tragedy where you can be doing everything right and someone who's really struggling chooses to end their life in a way that changes your life forever at the same time. So I know of two. We've done a lot of work with healthy heads and trucks and sheds, and they do have dedicated professionals that help drivers who've gone through trauma, as do Lifeline, as do Beyond Blue. There's a heap of different people who are all out there trying to support those who are struggling with something they've seen or been involved in. I guess I'd push them. I'd say, even if you feel like, hey, if that happens to you, I'm not sure where Christian's at, it doesn't hurt to reach out to someone to talk about it, because sometimes, and those who've been involved in the armed services will know, sometimes it's years later when it can come back and have an impact on you.
Yep.
And it's just been sitting in your subconscious for years, changing your life in ways you're not even aware of. So it's a really good question. It's an absolute tragedy that drivers in this industry and the rail industry and quite a few are used in that way and exposed to that. But I guess I couldn't speak highly enough of some of those resources, Beyond Blue, Lifeline, Healthy Heads and Trucks and Sheds. They've all got healthcare professionals who are all there to try and support people going through trauma and challenge.
Can I just repeat, the Lifeline number is 13 11 14 if you need help. Lifeline is free. They are qualified counsellors. They're available 24/7, 13 11 14. Good question, Kelsey.
One of the things we're challenged by at the moment is increasingly what we're seeing is and hearing is drivers who aren't necessarily trained on the vehicles and the routes they're on. And a lot of these drivers, come from different countries. One of the challenges I have with this is the narrative increasingly is about the driver. And from our perspective, the narrative should be, what's the employee doing? If you should not employ someone, put them behind the wheel of a truck they can't drive safely on a route they don't know. If you're the boss, you're putting someone in harm's way. That's not the driver's fault. You shouldn't hire someone for a job unless you know they can do that job safely. And yet what we're seeing is increasingly drivers being put on the road who don't know the truck, don't know the route, or don't know the law. And again, we spend, I think it's close to over 10,000 hours last year just educating drivers on how to fill out a work diary. That's increasing every year because employers aren't teaching their drivers about work rest hours, et cetera, about fatigue. And I guess I'd put this out there to the listeners. If you're employing staff, please make sure you are training them properly and that they can do the job safely. But if you're a driver and you're coming across other drivers who are irritating you because they don't know what they're doing, I guess I'd say move your anger away from the driver, put it back to the person who's put them behind the wheel without training them properly or checking they can do the job safely.
It's a really good point, Rod, isn't it? The narrative is always on the driver, but what Paul's saying is correct. What's the employer doing, letting them drive if they're not qualified? But it always has puzzled me that someone can come to this country from anywhere in the world, and if they've got an international driver's license, they can get off the aeroplane, go straight up to the budget rent-a-car and drive off into the sunset. And they may not know our rules, maybe can't speak English. We don't know what sort of a driver they are, but they can just come in and take a rental car and off they go.
Yeah, and look, again, I know personally I've driven rental cars overseas in countries, and I was probably not the greatest driver.
Can I just jump in here? I'm not having a go at budget. Any rental car, Yeah. Budget, you're wonderful people, I'm sure you are. Sorry, Paul, keep going.
No, that's okay. Look, I know that there's some work being done on driver licensing, and quite a few of the states, and SA in particular, are actually looking at what should and shouldn't be recognised for international drivers, and what should the test be for you to actually move up through combinations and to drive a heavy vehicle. So there's definitely work being done on making sure we're closing that safety issue where you step off a plane into a truck. So that's definitely happening. That's being recognised as well. I think, to me, I talked to Rod about this, I'm not sure if you ever Rod, about a year or so ago. It's what I'm hearing from drivers who've been in the industry for a while is the culture has changed. It used to be about mateship. It used to be you see someone struggling inside the road, you pull over, you help them change the tyre or do something. The truck stop, you help each other out. Lately, that's kind of disappeared. And it's a real shame because I think you said at the start, Rod, 8 hours at home. It's a lonely job. It's a job where you're away from your loved ones a lot. It's a job where the mateship of other people who are on the road fills a gap and actually helps support you when you're struggling. It helps you understand how to do things and gives you tips. And I think it's a damn shame if we've moved away from that concept of actually helping each other out.
Isn't it funny, mate? I had said to people, even on the radio occasionally, didn't your mum tell you when you're a kid, if you can't say something nice, don't say anything at all? Now, that's a pretty reasonable truism. And unfortunately, social media is really good for some things and it's really bad for others. And look, no matter who is driving the truck, if they're people from overseas, they've come here because it's a bloody good place to live. They've come here to support a family. And the same as us, mate, when I was a kid, you learnt. You didn't know everything the minute you got in. And whilst I'll still criticise the licensing process, and I still believe with cars we only teach people enough to pass the test, let alone how to survive on the road, and we don't teach them at that point how to share the road with trucks. And Paul, you've done something with the NHVR for that, but I believe that's got to be part of the licensing process, not just the ones who want to come and listen. But the mateship has changed. And unfortunately now people, instead of saying, geez, mate, have you got a problem there? Can I help you? It's let's get the camera out. I'll pull it up on Facebook and I'll get my 2 seconds of fame showing that you've screwed up. Now, if there's a person alive who's never made a mistake, and geez, mate, I made it when I was a kid, and luckily in those days you made it and you thought, Jesus, that wasn't a really clever thing to do. I'm not going to do that again. Now you make that mistake, somebody puts it on Facebook and they just punish the shit out of people. And I'm really sad that that's the way we've ended up. Years ago, if you were a young bloke in the industry, and I only answered this question on your podcast yesterday, Paul, what do you do to help other drivers? Well, mate, the first thing you do is you ask questions. If you don't know, ask. And as you just said before, it's not the driver's fault that he doesn't know, but where's he going to learn?
Yeah, great message, Rod. I couldn't agree more. And I think it's interesting. People judge the industry on the worst of what they see. So if there's a driver who doesn't know what they're doing, you had a chance to help them understand. If you don't, and they go away and they keep driving poorly, that actually reflects on everyone in the industry, not just that driver.
Paul and Rod, while I've got you both here, this is something I'd love your comments on, both of you. It concerns the National Road Transport Association, and they're calling on the federal government. So this is a federal issue. And they're calling on the federal government to push all states and territories to provide comprehensive and consistent data on road trauma. And that's in the wake of a recent truck crash data that was released. The NTARC, the National Truck Accident Research Centre, their major incident report 2025 was released. And the CEO is a bloke called Warren Clark, who says, look, it's encouraging to see progress being made. Would you like to see more transparency and more facts and figures released so you've got more to work on? I'll let you go first, Paul.
Absolutely. So we do have a lot of data. The challenge is, and this is why they want a consistent approach, is that each state reports it differently, which means it's hard then to say, hey, what is causing road trauma? What are the risks we can address and fix for industry and for drivers when you've got different data sets being collected? So it doesn't matter what industry you're in. And again, if you're a modern driver, there's a heap of tech in your truck as well, which tells you a lot of information. It's no different for us. The more information we get around how to make the industry safer and more productive, the better we are at doing our jobs too. So yeah, we're very much in favour of seeing joined up consistent approach to reporting, because that'll make our job easier, which hopefully then will make it easier for industry as well.
So does the NHVR work in tandem with the National Truck Accident Research Centre? You should.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, so I went to a presentation this week where they released that report you just mentioned before, and I've been sharing data back and forth with NTARC and with Monash around some of the data we have, which will help actually inform them and some of the research they're doing as well. So look, we share data with a heap of different research centres. We share data with different regulators who are looking at safety regulators as well, because to be honest, the sharing of data and that certainty that data gives you helps you understand what's the best thing I can do to make sure that driver gets home safe. So yeah, we freely share data.
I know that in the event of an accident on the side of the road, the police turn up, there's tragedy, there's personal injury involved. Now, a lot of the time, and occasionally, I think I saw on one TV show, they looked at the condition of the road. When that accident occurs, they don't look back up the road to this diagonal dip across the road that the car actually sort of just drove through while the bloke was sticking his finger in his ear, and that's why he ploughed into the truck. All they've seen is the accident with the car and the truck. They haven't taken all of the contributing factors into account. Then that deformity stays there. It doesn't get fixed, and there could be another accident which we could have prevented. So that data is critical. I just want to make sure that all of it gets to you so that you can help us go to the states and say, this road should have been fixed or it needs to be fixed. We don't have a national road standard. And I honestly believe I should be able to bring a road authority and say, that pothole's there, it's on a major highway, you should have it fixed within, let's say, 2 weeks. But there should be something like that to help us get the roads fixed. You see the damage from the roads into the trucks. And people will say, why are the trucks got to be roadworthy when the roads are truckworthy? How much of that stuff with the roads is something that you might be able to help us with, Paul?
Yeah, so a couple of points you raised, Rod. I'll start with the accident investigation part. So we only get involved if it's a breach of the HVNL, right? So if it's identified it's a fatigue issue, there's a mechanical issue, let's say it was a load restraint or a massive, we get involved at that point. But I can talk to most of the police investigations that I've seen when there's been a fatality. They look at everything. They look at dash cams of other cars. They do look at the road condition. What was the cause of that accident? And it's a really good point you make. I remember first time I driving from SA from east to west, there's a stretch of road. I drove it at coming over sunrise or sunset. Anyway, unfamiliar road, and the sun breached the horizon, absolutely blinded me. And I decelerated. But it's an example of where you can be the safest driver you can be, but an environmental condition, whether it's road condition or the sun breaching the horizon when you're not ready for it, blinding you for a second, can cause an accident. So I'm pretty confident that the police investigations do try and look at all the root causes of the accident. Even if it's not talked about, I've seen quite a few of the reports they do, and they do look at that when they do an investigation into a fatality. In terms of road conditions, what's the role we can play? Unfortunately, it's fairly limited. I do feel for the state government sometimes on this, because with the number of disasters we're having, they've got fixed budgets, their road budgets are being eroded because the fuel tax probably isn't growing with the number of vehicles on the road, because electric vehicles obviously are paying that fuel excise, which is used to fund new roads and repairing roads. So I do feel for the state governments in terms of the pressure on their budgets to keep that infrastructure to the level it should be to keep everyone safe. So I know it's a really tough job for them. Unfortunately, it's not one we get to play in. Most of our activities are actually about what's on the road, not the road itself.
So will the owners and the operators or both or whoever of electric trucks, will they have to pay a little bit more now because they're going to be causing more damage, aren't they?
Well, this is what the government's looking at. The government's looking at things like mass distance charging, all these alternate ways of making sure that all the users of our roads are paying their fair share to keep those roads in the condition they should be. So I know it's absolutely high on the agenda for the federal governments and the state governments at the moment.
There's one more question I want to ask you. Because of the very nature of the trucking industry and the fact that drivers of trucks are on the road more than anyone else as professional drivers, tragically and sadly, they're often the first people on the scene of a tragedy, and they're first responders because they're on the roads a lot.
Yeah.
And I know it's traumatic for paramedics and police and fireys, but it's just as traumatic for a truck driver who hasn't been trained to cope with this ordeal. Should there be more help available to truck drivers who are on the scene of a tragic accident first?
Oh, absolutely. To me, that's an absolute no-brainer. There should be. But I do know previously we funded through the Heavy Vehicle Safety Initiative, which is a federal government funding that we administer, a program to try and support drivers. There's a third party who wanted to put a program together to support drivers on exactly that reason, because especially in regional and remote areas, they are often the first person on the scene, and it is traumatic and it's challenging, and I couldn't agree more. There should be more there to support those drivers. Again, you mentioned Lifeline earlier, Healthy Heads and Trucks and Sheds, Lifeline, all those areas, those organisations, they can help, all right? And it's one of those things, if you experience trauma, it can sit with you for a long time. Suddenly you're not sleeping well, your concentration's gone all funny, and you don't realise it's because you've been exposed to that trauma. So I do encourage a listener, if you or your mate comes across road trauma and you're the first person that you're helping out, just chat to someone about it as soon as you can. And sometimes that first chat is all you need to help you work through or then get additional help to make sure it doesn't adversely impact you down the track.
13 11 14, 24/7 Lifeline.
I would say to listeners again, if you're a driver and you've been asked to do something you think is unsafe, please call our confidential reporting hotline. It's 1-800-931-785. Or you can go online. Every single call we get, we assess. The more calls we get, the easier it is to make sure this industry is safe for you and for other road users as well.
As Rod alluded to earlier, no truck driver wants to dob in his boss and potentially lose his job. And if it's a particular incident that this caller, this truck driver, is referring to, and the boss gets investigated, the boss is going to know who narked on him. This is the problem.
Yeah, the legislation actually covers that. If you actually, I can't think of the exact wording, to be honest, off the top of my head, but basically if you're treated adversely by your boss because you've raised a safety issue or you've called us, legislation actually covers that, and that can come back hard against the boss. It's a tough gig. I understand, if you're choosing between your job, your livelihood, paying your mortgage, putting food on the table for your family, that's really what it comes down to sometimes, and whether you make the call or not. And I'll just say again, I'm not sure anyone's family would think it was a good choice if you were the victim of road trauma that you could have stopped if you just made that phone call. I think the family wants you to come home safe. The family wants you to be safe. We want you to be safe. I said before, no load is worth your life. No job is worth your life. If you think you're being put in an unsafe position, please call us. Please do something about it.
So the follow-up to that, Paul, is I've had drivers contact me and say, I rang that number and they didn't do anything. Now, I've explained to them at the time, if I ring up and say, Luke Boner was shot a cat and I've got no proof, but he's a bad bloke and you should go and look into it, it's the same thing. Someone can't ring your number and say, Fred did this and he's a bad bloke and I want you to fix it. Now, you have to investigate. You can't just walk in the next day and say, right, you did this and you're going to jail. So blokes have to understand, yes, you want the information. B, they must give you the information that you need to be able to pursue it. You can't just say he's a bad bloke and expect you to fix it. And C, whilst that information, when it comes to you, has to be investigated, it's got to be also proven before you can go and do something. So blokes got to understand that just because they ring up and say, I don't like him and you should take him off the road, doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. They've got to give you what you need. They've got to expect there's a process involved.
Correct.
Yeah, and sometimes, Rob, what can happen is we don't have enough information off the single call But we might just say, you know what, this company, let's start pulling over more of their trucks. Let's start gathering more information, and seeing if there's other sources we can get which can validate that first call, which lets us take more punitive action. So again, every single call is assessed. We look at our data holdings, we look at what else we know about that company. And like I said, sometimes what the next stage is how do we get more information to prove that what we're being told is correct?
If we work with you, if we have that aim, I think in the long term, we can both improve things. Get up and have a say, make the effort, give you a suggestion, an idea, and say, can you help us, rather than you're there to hang us, bugger you, I'm just going to do my bit. So, mate, I really thank you for your time. And I do believe that we can make things better if we work together.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to be here. Thanks, Rod. Thanks, Luke. Thanks, Kels. Thanks very much.
How good was that? Thank you, Paul. Well, Rod, I think that was really productive. And if you've got a question for the NHVR, I mean, he's very approachable. Paul Silvardi, who is the NHVR Chief Operations Officer. Let us know. LukeBonerRadioGuy@gmail.com. And remember, if you do need to report something, nothing's going to change unless you do something. 1-800-931-785. And if you do need some help, please Lifeline. And there are other numbers, but look, Lifeline's easy. 13 11 14. Just give them a call if you need some help. So another Truckie Tuesday, done and dusted. Rod Hannafy, thank you so much. And thank you again to ICEPACK. Just a reminder, ICEPACK, making your life more comfortable. What's the slogan again, Kelsey?
The toughest there is.
I just wanted to hear you say that. ICEPACK, the toughest there is. But Rod Hannafy, thank you so much. I think we made some leeway today.
Never give up. That's my motto. Safe travelling to all.
Well, we've got a really special segment this Truckie Tuesday, and it's with the people that make it possible. ICEPACK. You've heard us talk about ICEPACK, the toughest there is. And their national sales manager is Adrian Berthleson. He's on the line. Welcome aboard, Adrian. Welcome aboard Truckie Tuesday and the Bonafide podcast.
Hi, Luke.
I've heard Rod rave about ICEPACK for a long time now when we did the Truckie Tuesday show on the Triple M network. So now I know a little bit about it, and it's a have-to product for anyone that drives and has to perhaps pull up because their logbook says time to pull up, and you can't always choose where you stop. And sometimes it's in the heat, sometimes it's in the cold, and this makes it so that you can sleep, so that you're rested, so that you're not fatigued, and ultimately it keeps our roads safer. So it does a lot of things.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's the whole idea of the product. Sam and Charles, the original guys that are still here today, they had a little help from Sam's dad about 30 years ago to help the drivers of the trucks to stay nice and cold when they're sleeping. Because, 30 years ago, there was nothing. It was pull up, windows down, doors open, and hope that the fly screen keeps the sand flies out. So they come up with this idea, and they've been toiling away for 30 years, and the rest is sort of history from there.
Well, I want to play this video for you of Rod Hannafy talking about the ICEPACK. You tell me if he's hit the nail on the head. Have a listen.
It's bloody cool outside. Why would you run the ICEPACK? But, mate, what it does, it gives you one set temperature all night. So instead of waking up when it gets hot or cold and pulling the blanket on or throwing it off, it's one temperature all night. You get good sleep. You get up fit and ready to go to work.
Your response?
No, that's exactly right. So primarily it's an air conditioner, but over the years we have developed, just due to demand, the heater option. But the air conditioning side of it, exactly how he said there, you start it up at night time or, when you hop out of the truck and you go have a shower or whatever you might do, start it up, start it running. So when you come back, your cab's nice and cold, pop in and then you just set your temperature and have a good night's sleep. Compared to nothing, you continuously battling the elements, windows up, windows down. Some of the old school guys, they would leave the truck idling on high idle, which is less than ideal. So exactly what he said, that's that's the whole idea of it. Keep the drivers nice and rested and ready to hit the road again in the morning.
Yeah, and it's quiet. So you're not idling your truck, as you say, at high idle. So things are quieter, but not just for you, but for trucks parked either side of you.
Oh, yeah. Look, it's actually been a thing over the years, and we don't shy away from it. You know, the old ICEPACK, she was original one. She was quite loud and noisy, but people did buy them because they just wanted to be nice and cold. And over the years, you know, with technology and what we've learned, you know, they've definitely gotten a lot quieter. The biggest benefit, you know, to running your truck on high idle is fuel consumption. Yeah. So the ICEPACK's around about half a litre an hour. A truck on high idle is anywhere from 3.5 to 6.5 litres an hour. And on top of that, you're going to, you know, it's not ideal to run a big truck engine just sitting there on high idle. It will glaze or can glaze the engine. If you go in regards to servicing, you're going to end up with an extra 8 hours of runtime on your engine over 5 nights of the week. You know, that adds up in regards to you're just going to have to service your truck engine a little bit sooner. The cost benefits really, really do come into it. Start the ICEPACK up, go to bed, wake up in the morning, start your truck up and away you go.
Yeah, refreshed. The millennial came across this video the other day, and I want to play it for you because I got a follow-up question. Now, it's from Russell Coit's All Aussie Adventure. Have a listen to this.
Yep. Just stop for a cuppa and to fill the old fuel up. It's funny, in the city, you get used to 24-hour petrol stations. But out here, not like that. That's why it's vital that you carry spare fuel. Of course, if you do run out of fuel in the middle of nowhere, it's important that you don't panic. Stay with the vehicle, get out of the sun, and drink plenty of water, which is something else you should carry plenty of.
Okay, he's put water in the diesel in the truck, and so obviously he's put petrol on the fire.
Yes.
So the question we wanted to ask you is, what are the chances of putting the wrong fuel in the ICEPACK?
Very little. We tap off the truck fuel tanks, so there's no secondary fuel tank for the ICEPACK. We just plumb straight into the truck diesel tanks. Unless they're going to put 2,000 litres of water in, then no, we're not going to have that issue. We have had a few over the years where trucks have, you know, been stuck in floods and things on those lines, and they have gotten contaminated fuel, or especially, you know, up around northern Australia, some of the remote areas where the fuel tank that they're filling up from does get contaminated with flood water. So they fill the truck conks out along the road because it's got contaminated fuel. And then they go to start the ICEPACK, and it's also obviously running off the contaminated fuel. So that's about the only time that we've ever come across that. But no, you can't put the wrong fuel into the ICEPACK.
Look, I see on the website, icepack.com.au, that there's actually a spare parts store. Tell us about it.
Yep, that was a little initiative from one of the guys here. A big part of our business is not only providing the ICEPACK and installing it on the truck, but obviously our backup service as well. Over the 30 years, we've just gotten more and more demand, busier and busier. One of the guys here, he set up the online store, and you can go on there. It's got pictures, because a lot of the times, you know, someone knows what the part is. You know, the alternator might have failed. They can just go on there. It has a picture of the alternator. Click on that, pay by credit card. We'll box it up, send it out for them. And that goes right down to even the little spring for the governor or a little seal. So every time we sell something, we're adding it. We just continuously add into that website. So, yeah, it's just progressing with the times. Everyone's online now. So rather than having to ring up and talk to someone like myself, you can just jump on there while you're sitting in the truck, tapping what you need, and also workshops as well. They can go on there and do bulk orders. So, yeah, it's been a really good thing.
And the ICEPACKs can actually be mounted differently. Can you just explain the difference between each option and the trucks that they're most suitable for?
Yeah, so there's a variety of options because not every truck is identical and not every truck driver and company has the same use, you know, so they're different lengths, different weight requirements. So we've got to put the ICEPACK in certain positions to make sure that we're within the weight requirements. We've got to allow swing clearance if we're putting the ICEPACK behind the cab. So we've come up with pretty well every option we have, which is probably the original design was we'd fit the ICEPACK on the chassis behind the fuel tank, just in front of the drive tyres. Over time, we started building frames that would go behind the actual sleeper cab. So then it's sitting above the fuel tank. We call that above tank ICEPACK. That will go on either side, doesn't really matter. And then we've also fit the ICEPACK at the rear of right down the very back of the chassis. We have two options down there. We have a cradle that we build and we can put any ICEPACK in there. And then we have a specially designed, what we call in chassis one. And that drops in the chassis behind the rear diff. And that covers a huge range of trucks. We go everything from, we've done them on Mitsubishi Canters and Ivecos right through to big Kenworth C509s. We even fit them onto really bizarre fit-outs in regards to Land Cruiser troop carriers for underground mining. We've done some of them over in Perth where they have their underground radio-controlled diggers. So the guy sitting in his troop carrier out in 45, 50-degree heat, he sits in there with the ice pack running, then he radio controls, drives the digger underground. We've done them for cranes, a huge variety of applications. So it's not just specific to trucks, but we do branch off. We've done them to a customer that had a large trawler that he would go offshore and do like remote fishing charters. And so he had the ice pack as an electrical backup.
Wow.
And air conditioning. So it's pretty cool. Yeah.
We talked about noise just a second ago, and they are so much quieter than they used to be. I was hearing that some cheeky truck drivers will switch their ice packs on if they're parked up to a particularly annoying, perhaps, caravaner, because like most engines, it does make some noise. Have you heard of any other weird or wacky ways people use their ice packs, ways that perhaps weren't probably intended?
We've heard that one when I was listening to your podcast a few weeks ago when that one popped up, because it is still a diesel engine. Inside the cab, you get a little bit of white noise. You hear it running, and a lot of guys with cattle trucks and the constant traffic going past, depending on where you are and things like that, it does make it a little constant hum there. In regards to bizarre or weird things, one that's always sort of stuck with me is the floods up north. You'd have guys parked up there and you'd see the photos of 50, 60 trucks stuck on one side of the river. Guys would actually sort of start saying, they used to call them little ice pack parties. They'd all park up, and then the guys that didn't have an ice pack would end up, because they're parked up for 4 or 5 days waiting until the floodwater drops, that all of a sudden have 2 or 3 guys sleeping in the one truck. So what goes on the road stays on the road, I suppose. But other applications for them, like I said, I have one of the guys over in WA was up north, had a couple of days off. He literally drove his truck down to the boat ramp, which was not being used, parked there so he could throw the fishing line out of the window with the ice pack running because it was too hot. So
that's creative. You see,
it is.
We broadcast to a creative mob, Adrian, a very creative mob. Listen, I love the slogan, the toughest there is. Where'd that come from?
So like Sam and Charles, they're Aussie blokes, and we're pretty aware that Australian conditions and Australian roads, they're pretty tough going, and truck drivers themselves are pretty tough blokes. So the product's been designed over the years and improved over the years just to keep up to those conditions. We're pretty proud of ourselves. Like we build our frames out of 8mm and 10mm steel frames, which is very similar to what they build some bull bars out of. You run over a cow or hit a roo or something on those lines, it doesn't damage the ice pack. We have a cover that goes over it that's built out of 5mm aluminium. It might bend that little aluminium cover. We just send you a new one, put it on, but the actual ice pack component and the actual ice pack unit itself, relatively untouched. That's a big part of it. We just build it so it's really, really strong. You can drive up and down the Bruce Highway or Pacific Highway, and next week you can be out in the Pilbara or wherever you might be. So, it's got to be designed to go over corrugated roads, which we're fully aware of. We make it so it does handle the big variety of situations that truck drivers will find themselves in.
So, okay, let's say you've made the decision to get yourself an ice pack. What's the next step? How's it fitted? Take me through that.
So we've got dealers pretty well all around Australia. We've got a main branch in our head office in Wacol in Brisbane, and then we have another branch that's owned and run by ICEPACK ourselves in Perth, and then we have another owned and run branch in Melbourne, and then we have distributors and dealers all throughout Australia. That the guys out at Toowoomba at TTSC in Toowoomba, they fit up all the ice packs out there. We have Steve down in Transair in Bendigo. We've got places all around that you make a phone call, we want an ice pack. They'll talk you through all the different options that's available for your truck. Once that's worked out, they'll send us an order. We'll build the actual ice pack, whichever one they need for that truck. Once it goes down there, then the boys or wherever it's getting fitted up, they'll just go through the process. And, if we're going up behind the cab, we'll build the frame to sit the ice pack on, run all the air conditioning lines, fit everything up that's needed to be fitted up. And then at the end of the day, you've got a fully operational ice pack.
Well, I know Rod Hannafy is a huge fan, a huge advocate of ICEPACK. As I say, he rants and raves about it all the time. Just remind our listeners what the special deal is that we've got here on the Bonafide podcast.
Yeah, so since the truck show, we've had a 10% discount on any ICEPACK install that's been done here in Brisbane, hence being the Brisbane Truck Show. So we had that running. And then if you are listening to the podcast and you ring us up and you want to get an ICEPACK installed here in Brisbane, you use the code Luke10. That will get you a free auto start option for the ICEPACK. So that's where the ICEPACK will monitor your battery voltage on the truck. If you're away for the weekend, you've left your fridge running, and it's pulling your battery voltage down, instead of coming back on, Monday or whatever day you're coming back from your holiday in Bali, you get back and it will charge your batteries up. And then once it gets to optimal charge, it will turn itself off again, and we'll just sit there and monitoring it. So we're going to throw that one in for free as well if you use the code Luke10.
I've got to ask you this. As someone who's running a business, a national business, but from Brisbane, does daylight savings annoy you? Do you wish, for example, I often think anyone close to the border of New South Wales and Queensland, same thing with Victoria, especially New South Wales and Queensland, when you're doing business with people across the border, does daylight saving muck you up, or do you just get used to it?
No, it does. It does become a little bit tricky. I'm sort of somewhat used to it because I'm originally from Queensland, but I was working in Perth for 15 years in our branch over there. So I was used to the 2-hour difference to Queensland quite often. At the moment, though, for myself and my partner actually works here as well, with the daylight savings, so we're getting our Melbourne phone calls, because I look after Melbourne directly. We're getting them from 6 o'clock in the morning, which is 7 o'clock Brisbane time. The other issue we're having is that we then go right through until Perth finishes up at 4:30 over there, which is 6:30 here. 6:30, so that does make a bit of a challenging thing, but that's what we do. And we've gotten a little bit used to it, but I fully understand the whole daylight savings thing.
Do you wish you had it? Do you wish Brisbane was on daylight saving and you were in tandem with New South Wales? What are your friends? What does everyone that you know in Queensland say? Yeah,
so I grew up with a bit of a farming background, so that was the whole curtains fading and the cows not coming in at the right time. Yeah, so all that sort of stuff. But over the years, honestly, when we did trial the daylight savings, me personally, I enjoyed it. Yeah, I know a lot of people don't. Yeah, I think it probably just comes down to, like, if you're a morning person or an afternoon person. Yeah, I think once you get to work, time is pretty well irrelevant, isn't it?
Hey, listen, how do you reckon you have trouble coping? How do you reckon I went when I had a national radio program, 71 transmitters? And so I had Sydney, and out of daylight saving, the East Coast was easy, but daylight saving was tough. And then you got Adelaide, which was half an hour, which now an hour and a half. Then I had WA, which was 3 hours, back to 2. And for example, I used to broadcast to Burke, right? Well, Burke's on Adelaide time. So anyway, I didn't do time calls. I just used to say, look at your watch. That's I never did time calls. Anyway, icepack.com.au, icepack.com.au. Look, I've got to ask you one last question. As someone who has worked in the industry for a long time and you've heard a lot of stories, what's your one piece of advice for truckies when it comes to life on the road?
I'm going to say probably, I know, years ago talking to, and everything's changed especially over the last, 25, 30 years. I think now people really just have to look after themselves. And that's in every industry, every business, whatever it might be. Truck drivers just need to look after themselves. It's about, watching your fatigue, doing all the right things, making sure your truck's serviced and reliable, and, passing all the roadworthies. It's really, I suppose the biggest thing that I've seen over the years is just, a few people that might not have done that, and then you hear the horrible stories. It's probably just about looking after yourself out on the road. Just get an ice pack, turn it on, have a good night's sleep, get up the next morning, have a chat to your mates on the radio and get on the road and go.
Adrian Berthleson is the National Sales Manager for our major sponsor of Truckie Tuesday, ICEPACK. So you've heard the story. Go to the website. Remember the code LUKE10, LUKE10, and you get all those special deals. Lovely to meet you, Adrian. Welcome aboard. Thanks for the ride. See what I did there?
Yeah. No dramas at all. It's been a pleasure.
So thank you so much for being with us for episode 61. I love that jingle. Can we play it one more? Can you play it one more time? Or have people got to rewind?
I'll put it on Facebook.
Will you do that?
Yeah.
The Sean and Kim one or the AI one?
Both of them.
Okay. Very, very good, Kelsey. Very good. Thank you, as I say, for listening. And we'll be back very, very soon. On behalf of the millennial and everyone involved, which is the millennial and me, we love you.
And what is your thought of the day? Make it good.
Well, no, it's just something that happened the other day.
Okay.
Well, no, it's seriously, it's true. And I hear these things. Sometimes your mum says the funniest things ever, like when she bought that grill from aisle 3 in Aldi. How did they know I wanted that? I didn't even know I wanted it. It was very funny.
Quickly, we had somebody comment on the video I made about that the other day who said, I had a mate that went into Aldi to get dog food, came back home with a chainsaw and no dog food.
See, aisle 3 in Aldi.
It's so good.
What is the most random thing you've ever bought from aisle 3 in Aldi? LukeMotorRadioGuy@gmail.com. Send us a photo. Tell us the story behind it. That's very, very funny. No, the other day, because we're going to go on holiday soon, and I had my hair cut, and Tanya, who does my hair, said, you got to take your glasses off so I can get to the bits. And Nikki walks in and she says, oh, darling, you look so much better without your glasses. And I said, you look better without my glasses too.
Oh, rude.
Didn't go down well.
I'm not surprised that didn't go down well.
Goodbye.